Hey y'all, this is Miss Grant going over the Eureka Lesson 6, Rational Numbers on a Number Line. I'm just going to go over a couple of problems on this page, and then the second part of the lesson was watching a Khan Academy video, and I'll go over those problems from that video as well. So we are graphing rational numbers on a number line, okay? We know that integers are all positive and negative whole numbers, so like -5, +10. But when we talk about rational numbers, we're adding negative and positive decimals and fractions as well. So rational numbers is just a fancy term for adding positive and negative fractions and decimals to our integers, okay? So first we want to practice graphing some fractions just so we get the hang of it. I want to graph 4/5 and 6 7/10 for the fractions, and then we'll move on to decimals. For 4/5, okay? We know that 4/5 is less than 1 whole, so I know when I draw my number line, it's going to be in between 0 and 1, because 4/5 is less than 1 whole. Okay? I need to break apart my whole into equal pieces. Your denominator is going to tell you the amount of pieces. Okay? So my denominator is 5, so I want to break it up into 5 pieces. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces. Now, because I broke it up into 5 pieces and they're equal sized pieces, I have to figure out what is the length of each piece. Okay? So the length of each piece is 1 out of 5. This first one is 1 segment out of the 5 segments. This segment is 2 out of the 5 segments. Then you have 3 out of the 5 segments, 4 out of the 5 segments, 4 out of 5. And this last one, even though it's 1 whole, it's the same as the 5th segment out of the 5 segments. So 1 is the same as 5 over 5. Now that I've broken it up into the 5 pieces, labeled that each piece is 1/5, each segment is 1/5. Let's put that in a different color just to make it pop out. Now I want to graph 4/5. So I'm going to start at 0 and work my way until I see 4/5, and I'm going to put a dot. And put a decent sized dot so you know that that is 4/5. You can also label it on top as 4/5. Alright, we'll move on to our second problem, 6 7/10. Okay? We love to graph mixed numbers. Mixed numbers are the easiest thing for us to graph because we have a whole number and a fraction as well. So this whole number is going to tell us where it in between which 2 whole numbers it's going to lie between, and then we just focus on the fraction after that. Because my whole number is 6, I know that I'm working with starting at 6 because I know it's not less than 6, so the next whole integer after 6 is going to be 7, so I know I'm working in between 6 and 7. So when I draw my number line here, I always want to start at 0 just so I can see where it is compared to 0. So then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And these are all whole numbers. Then I'm going to leave a pretty decent space in between 6 and 7, only because I now need to split this piece up. So I want to leave a decent amount of room. So I'm done with my whole numbers. So I'm going to cross it out just so I don't get confused anymore. And I'm now working with 7/10. So now I'm going to break up this whole between 6 and 7 in, split it up. And my denominator is going to tell me how many pieces I'm going to split it up into. My denominator is 10, so I'm going to have 10 pieces in this space. Okay, so now I have 10 spaces here. Okay, this first space, this is 1 out of 10 equal spaces, so this is going to be 1/10, which means that each piece is going to be 1/10. Which means this is going to be the second piece out of 10, and so on, and you can continue down. I'm not going to have enough room, and in order to keep this kind of neat, I'm going to skip some numbers. So we have 4/10, 6/10, 7/10, 9/10, and of course the last piece is going to be 10 out of 10. Alright, so I know each piece is 1/10, okay? And I'm already in between 6 and 7, so I'm already graphing at the 6 point. So now I'm going to work my way and look for 7/10, and 7/10 is going to be the 7th piece out of the 10. So I'm going to put a nice big dot here at 7/10. So it's 6 and 7/10 as plotting that fraction. All right, moving on to decimals. I'm only going to do one of these problems because you're only really going to see numbers with these kind of decimals. So I want 3.75. I have a whole number in front of the decimal, and then I have the decimal to the right. So first up, I know this whole number is going to tell me in between what two whole numbers my number is going to lie in between. I'm starting at 3, which means I know it's not less than 3. It's got to be in between 3, and the next whole number is going to be 4. So I know this is going to be in between 3 and 4. And again, I always want to put 0 just so I can see where I started and compare where I am to 0. So now I'm in between 3 and 4. So now I'm going to cross out my whole number so I don't get confused. Now I'm working with 0.75. 0.75, 0.50, and 0.25 are the easiest things to graph because they're part of quarters. Think about 25 cents and how many quarters go into $1 and how much each quarter is worth. Okay? So we want to break this up into quarters. Quarters meaning 4. So I'm going to break this up into 4 equal pieces. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 equal pieces. Now I know, because I know 0.75 is part of quarters, I know that each piece is going to be a quarter, and how much is a single quarter? It's 25 cents, so 0.25. After 1 quarter, you have 50 cents, 2 quarters. And when you have 3 quarters, you got 75 cents. And when you have 4 quarters, you have a magical dollar or 1 whole. And I know each piece is going to be 0.25. Alright, so now that I've found my whole numbers that I'm working with, and then I've broken that up into equal pieces, and I've labeled my equal pieces, and I found out how much each piece is, I'm now going to graph that 0.75. So I start at 3, and I work my way to 0.75, and I put a beautiful dot, and I label it 3.75. Easy. Alright, now we're going to practice doing some positive and negative rational numbers. So I did attach the Khan Academy video to OneNote, but I also want to go over the problems that are in the video. So in the video, they give you these lists of rational numbers, and they're asking you to order it from least to greatest. I don't want to order it from least to greatest. I just want to practice graphing these. Okay? So we have 7/3, -5/2, 0, -2, -12/4, -3.25. Now the first thing I ask you is, if you look at all of your fractions, regardless of the fact that they are positive or negative, what do you notice about them? And what you notice is that they're all improper fractions, meaning the numerator is larger than the denominator. And when you notice that, it's harder to graph improper fractions, and so we want to turn all these improper fractions to mixed numbers so that we can easily graph them. Okay? So we want to turn our improper fractions into mixed numbers. So if we start with 7/3, and we ask ourselves, how many times does our denominator go into our numerator? 3 goes into 7 2 whole times, because 2 times 3 is 6, and there's 1 left over, so that's our numerator, and then our denominator stays the same. So 7/3 is the same as 2 1/3. You can also check this by turning your mixed number into an improper fraction by doing 3 times 2, which is 6, plus 1, which is 7, and you got 7/3. So we have -5/2. The negative's kind of just along for the ride, so just kind of bring them along with you. We want to see how many times 2 goes into 5. That's going to be 2 times. 2 times 2 is 4. We've got 1 left over, and we bring our denominator with us, so we now have 2.5. Don't forget that negative, so it's -2.5. And our last one, we have -12/4. We want to see how many times 4 goes into 12, and it actually goes in evenly. It goes in 3 times with nothing left over, so we're going to have a -3. It is okay to have a whole number. It's easier to graph that. All right, Now that I have mixed numbers here and I've got a decimal and a whole number and 0, we can now graph these. Okay? On my number line, because I'm working with both positive and negative integers, I want to have 0 smack dab in the middle. And then I'm going to count probably out to 4, because if I look at all my numbers, my highest number is -3. So I'm going to probably work my way out to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. Alright, so let's start graphing these. For 7/3, I know 7/3 is also the same as 2 1/3, so I know I'm going to be on the positive side. I know my whole number is 2, so I'm going to be in between 2 and 3, and because that's a fraction, if I break this up into thirds, I know the first one's going to be 1/3, second one's going to be 2/3. So 2 1/3 is going to be here. Alright, I'm going to cross that out because I'm done with it. We have -5/2. I know that -5/2 is the same as -2 1/2. Alright, now I'm working with the negative side. Notice with the positive side, we did work our way away from 0 to the right of 0. With negative numbers, it's the same thing. We're still working away from 0. It's just now to the left. So it might take some adjustment, but we're still going away from 0 whenever we're graphing. Alright, so first I'm going to look for -2. So now I know it's -2 1/2, so it's going to be in between -2 and 3. Remember, we're still working away from 0, okay? And since 1/2, I'm going to split it up into 2 pieces. I know this piece is -1/2, and that -3 is -2/2. So I have -2 1/2, and my dot's going to be right here. I'm going to cross out and I'm done. We have 0, plot at 0, easiest one. We have -2, so I'm going to work my way toward the negative side at -2, put a nice dot, and label it -2. -12/4, I know -12/4 is the same as -3, so we're just going to work our way on the negative side and plot a point at -3. We're going to cross that out because we're done. And our last one, -3.25. Alright, we've worked with decimals before. The most recent one was 3.75. Same idea, we're still breaking it up into quarters because 25 cents, you break things up into quarters. So we're still going to work with the negative side. I know I'm going to go to -3 because -3 is my whole number, and then I'm going to work my way out of 0, okay? So I'm going to split the space between -3 and -4 into quarters, meaning 4 pieces. And I know each piece is 0.25. So just like we did before, those are all negatives. And so I'm working with -3, and then I go to the -0.25, and that's where -3.25 is. Our negative side is kind of popular today. Alright, so that is graphing our rational numbers. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you have all of these notes written down, and make sure you get the classwork, which is that standard mastery sheet for standard number system 3.6. And if you have any questions, please ask your teacher. Have a great day.